Although depreciation is not important in a cash flow financial model, it is a fairly important item when it comes to budgeting and forecasting. And indirectly, even in a cash flow model, it's important from a tax point of view. How much are you allowed to claim? So just to show you the example here, what we've got is some capex. So this is the annual model, and we know we're going to spend that much in year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. Now the traditional way that most people seem to build depreciation schedules is this matrix here. So you'll see that's year 1, and a formula's been set up to basically look and say we spent 100 Rand, it's got a life of 5, so divide these by 5, and you'll see that adds up to 100. In year 2, it's now got 200 that we spend, divide that by 5, gives us 40 per year. As a result, when you add up the depreciation, what you'll see is it adds it up like that. Now there's two problems with this method. Firstly, it's not particularly flexible. If I change that to perhaps 3 years, you'll see, even though the numbers change, somehow I'm only spending 1350, but I'm depreciating 2250. So that's clearly not going to work, and it also takes quite a bit of space. So there's another way you can work out your depreciation using a function you may have learned elsewhere called offset. If we look at what's actually happening here, when you're doing this calculation, you've got a 5-year life. What this means is that when you're in year 1, there's only 100 that's depreciable, so therefore we can take that divided by 5. When we're in year 2, those 2 items are depreciable. Year 3, we've got those 3. Until we get to the 5th item over here, 5th year, we know that all 5 of those must still have depreciation because we're within the 5 years. When we get to the 6th year, those are the only items that are still depreciable, because if we've got a 5-year life, that 100 must be fully depreciated by now. So what we need is a function in Excel that will allow us to add up the last 5 years in this case based on that number. But if I change that number to a 3, for example, it needs to then add up only those. So the function that allows that is the offset function. So I'm just going to set it up here. So the way offset works, I'm going to go find offset. I'm going to tell it to look at that point, the reference point. In this case, rows and columns we don't mind. Height we're going to leave blank, or we could put a 1. Width now we're going to say is minus whatever's in that cell there. And put my dollar signs on. When we say OK, you'll see it gives us 350, which doesn't make sense because I'm expecting an answer of 950. Why is that? Because at the moment we've told Excel highlight those cells. We haven't told it what to do with it. So I'm going to go and put a sum here, wrap it around, and what you'll now see is it says 950, and I'm going to just copy it to all these cells. So what we now have here is the depreciable amount. So when we're in that year, the only items that can still be depreciated are those last 5 years. When we get to this one, the only items are those 5, the 100 drops off, you'll see it sums to 1,100. So we now know the depreciable amount. To work out the depreciation should be as simple as take the depreciable amount, and at the end of here I'm just going to divide it by whatever our life is and put my dollar signs on. So now you'll see it says 190 when I paste it. So what's now happening is it's working out how much is still depreciable and dividing it by the life. You'll see these numbers match up exactly to these numbers here. But where this is most useful is just to remind you 1,350 in capex. When I add this up, 1,350 in depreciation. When I change this to 3 years, this one here is wrong because it's depreciating 2,250. But our calculation over here you'll see stays correct. Because in each case, it works out how much is still depreciable. So it knows that in a 3-year lifespan, only 650 is depreciable, divided by 3. So this way you can get your depreciation calculation down from this matrix to a single line. Now, just to address a common issue with offset, is what happens if I go and I put something like a lifespan of 10. When I click enter, you'll notice suddenly we've got ref errors. The reason we have ref errors is because, remember, the way it's set up is Excel's told stand here and go add back the last 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's falling off the sheet. So as a result, you've got ref errors. So we somehow need to stop Excel from falling off the sheet. So let's just put this back to 5. So how do we do that? Well, when we're in year 1, even though Excel is going to add back 5 now because of that 5, the reality is we don't really care about these. We only want 1 year. When we're in year 2, we don't care about anything past those 2 years. Once we hit 5, then we don't mind it always looking back 5 years. But we know that it must always be the lesser of the years that we've got from the beginning versus the life. So all I'm going to do is just create here a lifespan. So we'll just call it lifespan. And what I'm going to say is I want the minimum number of the year we're in. So notice that I've used my header, or the life of our depreciable assets. So you'll see then I get a 1, 2, and I can go all the way across here. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. If I change this to a 3, you'll see it goes 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. How does this help us? Well, if we go back into our calculation, if I look at the offset, what it's saying is look at a cell and go back minus that cell there. But instead of doing that, I know that I can actually say, no, don't look at that cell there. Look at my lifespan of the project. So I'm going to click in there. So we're now telling Excel that when it's here, it must only look back a width of 1. When it's here, it's 2. Eventually, it'll do the full 5. So I say OK. I can copy this across. So let's just check that it's still working. If I change it to a 3, let's add them up. 1350, 1350. If I change this to a 10, notice no more ref errors. If I add them up, you'll see it's a bit short because we need a few more years here. But this way, your offset doesn't fall off the screen and you don't get those ref errors.